Rugby, Alan Quinlan is here. How are you?
Good morning.
It's an interesting weekend of rugby, right?
It was, yeah, and it's. I suppose with 3 games to go, it's sometimes the Pro14 after big European games or Six Nations kind of is lost a little bit, but it was a very significant weekend for various different reasons. Obviously,
a 6-5 classic in Italy, for example.
Yeah, but you know what? It was.
They're the games that actually stand teams in good stead.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, they didn't play that well, Connacht, and but to get that win was really significant because Cardiff are breathing down their necks. I think they're Connacht are in third and Cardiff fourth. There's only 4 points separating them. So Munster did them a favour on Friday night by beating Cardiff, and then Connacht's getting the win themselves. So they go head to head next weekend in Galway, and it's
the perfect
a
fixture.
winner-take-all type,
isn't it? Like
well, if Connacht win, they're guaranteed playoffs. They're guaranteed European rugby. It's huge, really. So the games of the weekend, effectively, were huge games, Ger. Ulster have put themselves under pressure. It was always tricky going away to Glasgow, and they're away to Edinburgh this week as well. So it makes it very difficult. And Edinburgh are breathing down their neck, along with Benetton are in third, but Edinburgh in fourth on 51 points. So Ulster kind of suffered a bit of a hangover after the previous week, which is difficult, and that's the challenge.
They don't have the squad depth just yet to be able to absorb a loss like that and come out the other side. So you kind of feel like we're in that stage of Ulster's development where they need to add strength and depth, but they also need to get used to being competitive again.
Yeah, from where they were in the last couple of seasons, I think they show their capabilities in the quarterfinals against Leinster when they have a full deck to choose from. But as you say, it's probably that depth, and they're in real danger of possibly missing out because they're on 54, Benetton on 52, and Edinburgh on 51. So away to Edinburgh is going to be tricky for them now at the weekend. They've got to win that one because Edinburgh obviously go ahead of them if they beat them, and they've Leinster at home the following weekend, which are the last round of fixtures, which we know Leinster already qualified, guaranteed home semi-final. It'll be the week after Toulouse, so it'll be a weakened Leinster side. So they still have a shot there, but they've made it difficult for themselves. Now, it's very difficult to go to Glasgow. It's a tough place to go and win. And they won. They beat Ulster very, very convincingly on Friday night.
Has the attitude changed since when you were playing with regards to really focusing on the Pro14 more than they used to? Because like you look at Leinster, and of course the discourse is that they're very lucky because they don't have to focus on the Pro14 because they're already there and they can focus on April, the weekend of the 20th, 21st of April. But is that the reality for other teams as well? Really, like Munster surely are prioritising the Champions Cup, or has it changed to the point now where actually it is a balancing act?
Yeah, they're Munster in a position of trying to fight for that top spot with Glasgow. Glasgow are 3 points ahead of them, so if it's huge, it's financially rewarding to get that home semi-final. They would have a home quarter-final. They play an extra match away in a semi-final. It's always trickier if you get that home. If Munster home semi-final, no matter who they're playing, it's going to be very hard for someone to beat them there at Thomond Park. So that possibly puts you in a final and a 50-50 shot of winning the thing. So it's added benefit of doing that. So
how do you plot that out for the rest of the season?
I think Munster should play. Look, you've got to manage the players, but I think when you get to the business end of the season, the whole scale rotation stops, and you're trying to pick teams to win matches every game you can, unless you're already qualified and guaranteed. Munster go to Benetton at the weekend, and that's very, very tricky. They've been the surprise package of the Pro14 this year, and it's great to see they're sitting in third. It'd be fantastic if they made the playoffs. They've won 10 games, lost 7, drawn 2. Very, very difficult game for them. So what do Munster do? What does Johan van Graan do this weekend? Is he looking ahead to Saracens next week and say, well, I'm going to rotate everybody? I don't think he can. I think it'd be beneficial to the Munster players to play again, as many as they can play together again. So, look, you've got to manage guys with bangs and knocks and bruises. You shouldn't play them if if they're under pressure, and it could put them in doubt for the week after. But that's the intriguing part, and that's where squad depth comes into it. Munster squad is deeper this year, and that's why we were talking about Ulster. You know, to kind of compete on both fronts, you need a fair bit of depth. But I just think if you were Munster and you went to Benetton with a weakened side and lost, and then you went to Saracens with your full strength side the weekend. This is me being pessimistic.
Yeah.
And lost again, and then you had a away quarter final. I just think focus on this week and send the strongest team you can to Benetton and try and get a result, and then the following week will look after itself. I think the players have been managed pretty well over the season. Obviously you're not going to play guys with potential injuries, but that's the intrigue. I think it's when you're competing on both fronts, and I think Munster can win the Pro14. They have a better chance of winning the Pro14 than they have winning the European Cup. I don't mean that now to be disparaging to them, but Saracens obviously is a huge task in Europe. But to compete on both fronts, you need a squad depth, and that's the way it's going to be. That's why these last couple of rounds of Pro14 are very, very important. You can imagine for Connacht to have European rugby back in the sports ground is absolutely massive. It's huge.
It's huge for everybody. It's huge for all the players.
It's great for Irish rugby as well,
yeah.
and it's what they deserve, you know, and they start filtering players back into the Irish squad, more guys. We saw what happened with Jack Carty this year. From where they were last year.
Yeah, it's a complete turnaround.
You know, it's huge. And Andy Friend deserves a lot of credit for what he's done there to get that feel-good factor back.
Yeah, and fair play to him for getting that right. Here, you would kind of hope that whatever process led to the hiring of the wrong guy, they've examined that and it'll never happen again. But just to go back to Munster, how did the 9 and 10 play? Because obviously there's significant worry that Carby won't be back in time for the Saracens game. Tyler Blandall's a really good player who was completely off people's radar for 18 months because of the injuries that he suffered. Yeah, he seemed to play quite well at the weekend.
Yeah, he played well. I think both of them. I think the most pleasing aspect that would be the most pleasing aspect for Johan van Graan, that both of them played really well. Conor Murray showed glimpses of what he's capable of. He was full of energy, making breaks, taking on people around the side of breakdowns. His passing was good, his speed of delivery, all that stuff was good. It's a different level for sure, it's down a couple of notches, but he got a heavy knock in the first half. He had a head clash and he went off for a HIA. And I just had a sense that, will Munster keep him off now? Obviously if the HIA fails, you keep him off. But will they, even if he passes, will they keep him off and try and protect him? And I just thought it was significant that Murray, he wanted to go back out there again. He wanted to get back out in the field, and he's shown a real kind of character and resilience to get back out. And I thought he was superb. He got a try. He was brilliant. Really, really good performance from him. And Blendell was good as well. And it was a really strong second half from Munster against Cardiff. They were porous at times defensively in the first half. They conceded 3 tries, and the bench made a real impact. Tyg Burns, Stander coming off the bench, Niall Scannell. They made a real impact.
Not a bad bench.
It's not, no. And I think that's why I think maybe that's what they'll probably do this week in Benetton. They'll probably rotate those guys who were on the bench, start them, and bring put more frontliners on the bench and try and make sure they get the job done against Benetton, and then hope that Leinster can beat Glasgow and Dublin, and Munster will go back top, and then it's in their own hands then the week after when in the last game. So they're looking for a favour from Leinster, from our neighbours, to avoid in the semi-final.
Another one?
Yeah, another one. That would mean they'd avoid, Leinster would avoid Munster, and Munster would avoid Leinster in a semi-final.
Yeah.
But potentially they could meet in a final.
Which would work, I think, if you're Leinster.
Glasgow, Edinburgh, Connacht, Benetton maybe will have a bit to say on that, but I think I think the organisers wouldn't mind a Munster-Leinster final, would they?
No.
Just on the Conor Murray thing, like, I'm sure from everything that's happened over the past couple of months, he'll know more than anyone that he needs to be on the pitch regularly, that maybe it's a position by position case in terms of resting people this weekend ahead of Europe the following week. Like, rest your back rows, rest your pack, make sure they're fit and ready to go. But with your halfbacks, I wonder, is it a case of getting them on the pitch, get them as far away from rusty as they possibly can be?
Yeah, I think so. If they play again, I think the Munster team need to play as many of the frontliners. Look, I could be totally off the mark here, and they might just decide to rotate and give guys who maybe deserve a chance, who are kind of chomping at the bit and played a lot of those Pro 14s when the internationals were on and delivered from.
Yeah, it's like that. So a lot of those Irish players are coming back off a very disappointing Six Nations. Do you want to get them back and get their confidence going by giving them another game?
Well, I would play them again.
Are you happy now with that game and that's them confidence?
No, I'd play them again if you could. Now, I know it'll end up being 3. I think the weekend off that they can give them is the last game if they get the job done this week and win in Benetton, and hope for the other permutation of to happen for them. But like losing this weekend would be a real bad blow to them. It'd be disappointing, and it would mean it's a little bit easier to give Glasgow a little bit of comfort. They play Edinburgh in the last game at home.
You could always be rope-a-doping Saracens into a false sense of security. Look at these guys, they can't even beat Glasgow. And then it's like...
Yeah, it's match practice though as well, and if you get, I think they'll be better. I think they'll be better the week after if they can get those combinations again, playing not for the whole game, 40, 50, 60 minutes, whatever the case may be, and bring off the bench then as well. So,
if Van Grant's got something up his sleeve for Saracens, is he working on it this week?
I'm not sure. I think there's always a tailored plan for whoever you play. If you look at the quality of Saracens, it's hard to find weaknesses in them. I think it'll be in the back of their minds, and they'll try not to show their hand fully. You've got to come up with something new, because teams analyse each other so much week on week that you've got to come up with some other strategy to try and... You think of the strategy 2 years ago, and when they played them in the Aviva, it was, kick everything in the air, even when they got an attacking position. So Saracens countered that, and it looked like a really poor performance from Munster. I think Munster have to back themselves to go and play. I think the best matches I've seen from this group in the last couple of years have been when they've just went at teams just with a real intensity, a real vigour, a real energy, and that's what they'll have to do against Saracens. There'll be no rocket science to try and break them down. They have to physically match them and just play as much as they can for as long as they can. I don't think they did that in Edinburgh, and they'll know themselves in the first half. They didn't play enough, they didn't build enough of phases, and you have to ask questions of good teams that sometimes they're good teams because teams are not capable of asking those questions. So it's the same in any sport, in football and GA and hurling, and so that's what Munster will have to do. So I think the added benefit of most of those guys trying to get those combinations out again this week will be beneficial. It's a Friday night game, so there's enough time to recover for the week after with the travel.
The injury profile that Munster have at the minute is about as good as you're going to get at the end of the season. So Keith Earls missed the game with a bit of tightness beforehand, and obviously we know about Carberry being out, but everybody else is pretty much back, largely fit at the moment.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you want. You're always going to have some injuries. I think the Carberry one would... I don't think he'll make... I find it very unusual if he does make it, because, even to... He won't have unless he makes a remarkable recovery and plays against Benetton.
Yeah.
I don't think he should... I don't think you can start him against Saracens, particularly the way he came back, missed him about 5 weeks, and then hamstring tightened up after 45 minutes. So we'll see. It'd be great if he can train this week. Maybe he can, and maybe he's back doing active work. But the injury profile isn't too bad for him, and they'll need everyone, because that'll be a bruising encounter against Saracens. You contrast that to some of the serious injuries that Leinster have. They're kind of waiting and hoping that Leo Cullen can have Henshaw back, maybe Devon Toner. They'd be massive for Leinster to get them back for the business end of the season. It
would transform the team if those two came back, but if they don't come back, I would say that Munster are actually in a better, stronger position just in terms of their available playing talent and the style that they want to have. They're not missing anything, with the exception obviously of their first choice 10, who obviously is kind of important, but feeling pretty confident about the rest of the season from a Munster perspective? Well,
if they get through this weekend, I think the Saracens one is a bonus thing. I think getting to the semi-final is an achievement, and okay, if you kind of wallow on that and say it's brilliant, I just think if they went out in the quarterfinals, it would be seen as very, very disappointing.
Yeah.
They've got to be in the mix, and I think they've got to try and get into a final and give themselves a crack. It's hard to win trophies, you know, it's very competitive, but I think getting into, and that's not being defeatist against Saracens, it's just how good Saracens are, so they can have a real crack at that. But I think Pro14 has to be a real target for them to try and win a trophy.
Yeah.
And win some silverware. So they're not in bad shape, to be fair, and hopefully they'll be in the mix there.
Alan, good stuff. Thanks for joining us this morning. Talking